All right. It is Tuesday, June 1st at 6:17, and I will call the meeting of the Ross Valley School District Board of Trustees to order. We have a full quorum on hand for all of the trustees, and our first order of business is to move into closed session. And our closed session tonight, let's see, do we have any public comment? Where our first closed session is a conference with legal counsel on anticipated litigation with respect to a special education program dispute. Do we have any public comment?
We do not.
No public comment. Okay, then we will recess into closed session. And when we come out of closed session, we'll move into our open session. All right. Welcome everyone to Tuesday, June 1st, Ross Valley School Board Board of Trustees regular meeting. We are reconvening in open session at 7:05 p.m. from our closed session. And as always, we will start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. And as we move into doing the Pledge of Allegiance and thinking about liberty and justice for all as part of that Pledge of Allegiance and equity, I wanted to just recognize that this month is June is LGBTQ plus Pride Month. And this is a time for us to recall that the trials of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community, which has endured, to rejoice in the triumphs of trailblazing individuals who have bravely fought and continue to this day to fight for full equality. This month, the one of the historical things to reflect on is the uprising of the Stonewall Inn in June back in 1969, which really is what sparked a liberation movement and a call to action that inspires us to live up to the promise that we say every time we do our Pledge of Allegiance of equity, liberty, and justice for all. And in the last 20 years, the LGBTQ plus community has made great strides in continuing their struggle for acceptance, visibility, and equality through elected officials, athletes, artists, and legislation, in turn, including the Marriage Equality Act that has passed, validating the relationships of millions of families across the nation. And validating those families is part of something that's very important to us with our students and all of the diversity of the families that we have in our community. So we want to acknowledge the growth and the awareness that has been raised over the years, especially with the internet now, and that the awareness of transgender and non-binary and gender creative children that can find confidence to live their authentic lives. So Pride is a jubilant communal celebration of visibility and a personal celebration of self-worth and dignity. And during the LGBTQ Pride Month, we recognize the resilience, contributions, and the determination of many in the LGBT community and the individuals who are fighting every day to live freely and authentically, and their ongoing struggle against discrimination and injustice that make us all a better and freer society. So with that recognition, I welcome us all to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And you can unmute yourself if you're muted, and we'll go ahead and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Go. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to
and
the
to the republic
for which
for which it
it
stands,
one
nation under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. All right, we will adopt the agenda and time allocations. Is there any trustee that has a question about the time or the allocations or the agenda? Any amendments or changes that need to be made for us tonight?
No question.
No questions, speak now. All right, then if not, I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda and the time allocations.
Marie, I second.
All right, so that was a motion and a second, and we'll go ahead with a roll call. So Shelley, aye. Marie?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
Wesley?
Aye.
And Ryan?
Aye.
Great. So there we have our agenda. Now we are going to recognize, as we come to the end of the year here, people in our education community who are going to be leaving us and going to be retiring and moving into the next phase of their lives. So take it away, Esther, in terms of our recognition for folks that are going to be retiring out of our district.
Thank you so much, Shelley. And it is my distinct honor on behalf of all of our site and district administrators to honor these fantastic individuals. We are honoring 6 people this evening who altogether have served Ross Valley School District for 133 years. That's hard to believe. So this evening, we are going to be honoring Jenny Bart, art teacher, who has served 15 years, Donna Faulkner, who has served as principal at Wade Thomas for 6 years, Terrell George has served 31 years at both Brookside and Whitehill as the instructional assistant there in special education. And Laura Honda has also served 25 years as a teacher at Manor and now Brookside. Mo Neuer serving 25 years in positions of elementary teacher and English teacher at both Wade Thomas and Whitehill. And then Kim Travaglini Lawrence for 31 years, who has been at Manor and this year serving as a first grade teacher. So with no further ado, we have prepared a presentation in their honor, and I would like to go ahead and share my screen. And I will do that now.
Esther, it's not sharing yet.
Oh,
I'll stop sharing mine. Maybe that, I don't know if that will help, but I'll stop sharing mine.
okay. Let me know when you're ready. And can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Very nice.
Thank you. So that concludes our brief honor for these amazing individuals. And at this time, I'd like to open it up to any of the other administrators who would like to say a word or two about these folks.
I just want to say that this is always a very exciting time of the year as we wish any of our retirees off onto their next chapter, but it's also a very sad and reflective time to think back on their amazing careers in education, not just in Ross Valley, but wherever they were before, if they started somewhere else before they came here and are ending their journey in education with us. Just want to acknowledge all of their work and their commitment, their dedication to all of our students, their fellow colleagues, their families in our school district. And also just, it's a hard time right now too, because typically we would celebrate all of our retirees in person and have a little reception following the recognition. And so just, it's also a hard time to go out in a school year too, where we can't have our regular activities and things like that. But want to just thank all of our retirees for all their service and time supporting every one of us in Ross Valley. And Peg, I think you were gonna
I'll start.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Sure. Well, first I want to say that I'm honored and humbled to share a few words about Kim Travaglini Lawrence. Mrs. TL, as she's fondly known, has been a first grade teacher at Manor School for the last 31 years. She is a legend in the Manor community for her steadfast dedication, unwavering kindness, and superb talent as a teacher. Kim is the person you go to if you want the honest truth. She's the one to talk to when you need sage advice. And Kim has touched so many lives at Manor, and the students and families have been incredibly blessed to have had the gift of her magic. Manor School, Ross Valley, and the teaching profession as a whole are bidding a fond farewell to one of the greats. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I just wish we had longer to celebrate her. We found out quite recently about her retirement, and we're all going to miss her terribly. And Donna, we're going to miss you too. I just want to say a few words about you. You have been an awesome colleague. We love having you on our team as principals, and I'm sure I'm speaking for the whole leadership team. And you have brought so much to RVSD, and it was an honor working with you. And I wish you the best in your retirement.
Thank you.
I'll chime in now. It's going to be really hard to follow Peg. Peg, that was beautiful. To talk briefly about the two Whitehill retirees, Terrell George and Mo Noya. And anytime someone has worked 31 years in a school system, they should be applauded. So Terrell, your impact on our special education students at Whitehill has been unmatched. We will miss you, and Dan is really, really going to miss you. What you've done as his partner, especially this last year, when the circumstances were very difficult, is to be commended. And I know that your grandchild is really excited to be spending more time with you. So congratulations. And Mo Neuer, 25 years in Ross Valley, the last several at Whitehill. One of the things that I will always love about Mo is that if ever I need to know the pulse of the 8th grade team, I know where to go. And I'm going to miss that because Mo is connected with her colleagues. She is loved by her colleagues, and she will be missed by her colleagues. Another thing about Mo that I think I have always appreciated is her candor and honesty, and her ability to still self-reflect after all these years in the classroom. And that is a testament to her professionalism. This year, in her 25th year of teaching, for her to really take on a new challenge in changing curriculum and really focusing on diverse perspectives in the classroom for 8th graders is a legacy that she will leave behind at Whitehill, and we're going to grow because of that. So Terrell and Mo, thank you both. Congratulations. I know you will find plenty to do with your spare time. And Donna, congratulations to you. It is an honor well deserved.
So next, I'd like to say congratulations to Laura Honda. Laura, it has been such a pleasure having you as a member of the Brookside team late in your career. It really was a gift to have you come to Brookside, and you've built a wonderful relationship with staff, with students and families. Many students have benefited from all that you've taught them and over the years. And I know that your passion for environmental conservation will remain alive through them. And we're very appreciative of the pollinator garden that you planted at Brookside with students. And I hope that you'll continue to come back in between watching your beautiful granddaughter. I hope that you'll come back and still help us at the garden at Brookside and put your passion to work there. We're really going to miss you. I also want to say congratulations to Donna. Donna, I'm so happy for you that you're going to move into retirement. You have worked so hard as a principal, and particularly this last year and a half with everything COVID. And I've appreciated so much working with you, and that you've stepped up, really gone above and beyond for all of us this year. And it's been great to have you as a member of the principal team. And I hope that you will continue to join us, because you've got a lot of great ideas, and help us out, and also join us for anything fun that we're doing. So I'll say goodbye for now.
Thank you. Is it my turn? Is it my turn?
Yes.
Go for it, yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for your kind words. I would like to recognize Jenny Bart for her 15 years of service. You know, this year again has been hard for everyone, but she carried on with passion and enthusiasm for her art. And all the years, she's just created such a warm, inviting, and safe place in her classroom where kids could express themselves creatively and learn new skills. And she's been flexible and supportive of everyone at Wade Thomas. So I know she'll be very hardly missed, and hard to replace. Her art room is the most organized room I think I've ever seen, especially for an art room. So she will be missed. And then I just want to say thank you too. When I think about all these other retirees and all the years of service that they've put in, I've only been in Ross Valley for 6 years. And that's my biggest regret, is I didn't come sooner. It has been so wonderful being part of Ross Valley. I'm so appreciative that I've had this opportunity, and am in awe every day of the talented and committed, passionate people I work with, both at Wade Thomas and throughout the district. So thank you all. You bet you're going to see me. It's not that easy to get rid of me. Thank you all, and best wishes to everyone.
Thank you, Donna. Yeah, and I think there are plenty of opportunities for any of our retirees to come back in one way or another. Donna has already pledged her commitment to returning, and hopefully whether it's to sub in any way or to join in any kind of fun that's going on at sites, we do hope that all of our retirees will be back. And Donna, thank you as a member of our administrative team for everything that you have done. What everyone else has said is truly true about how much you have gone above and beyond to support all of our work, not just in the past year and a half, but since you arrived in the district, to be an integral member of the team. And really, we'll miss you, and really thank you for everything that you have done. I know this was a hard decision, but when you made last year, just so thankful that you decided to give us another year this year. Really appreciate that. So thank you for doing what you do best, which is always to put others before you. And thank you for everything that you have done for every one of us in Ross Valley.
So I will, go ahead.
Love you all. Thank you.
If there's any other trustees or anyone else who wanted to.
Marie here. I have tears in my eyes, and I'm very emotional about saying goodbye to you, Donna, because I don't remember the last year because I was not at Wade Thomas anymore, but I sure remember your first year, your first few years as principal at Wade Thomas. And thank you, on behalf of the community, but all the work you have done for Wade Thomas. And I do sure hope to see you soon. I will see you. I will see Jenny Bart, because she lives down the street from me. So I'm good with that one. And my house is full of 24 years when I'm thinking about it. 4 kids, all of them were through Wade Thomas with Jenny Bart. So I have a lot of Jenny Bart in my house. So thank you on behalf of the entire Wade Thomas community. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
I just wanted to extend my thank you to everyone as well. It's just such an extraordinary group of women who are retiring at this point. And these are people that I worked alongside and worked with, 2 of whom taught my kids and means so much to me for what they gave them, and just mad respect. And Donna, I can't wait to celebrate you very soon, but wishing everybody just everything that they've earned from so many years of extraordinary service. Really wonderful.
Hey, this is Ryan. You know, just to piggyback off what was just said about service, you know, the people that retire with this many years dedicated to others is just remarkably fantastic choice of life. And it often goes overlooked. It often goes underappreciated. It often comes with a pain in the ass from a lot of parents, and sometimes a pain in the ass from a lot of community. And you know what? You're always on the front line every day. And it's really hard to look at all these stories and just pick out one person, one moment. And I don't really think that these moments at the end really do justice to really what your service really is. I mean, it lives in the community. It's at the ice cream store. It's what kids do when you're not looking. You know, you're the other set of parents, and you're the other set of leaders, and you raise our community, and it takes a village, and you kind of are the village elders when the parents are not around. And it really goes without saying that the Ross Valley is a very special and wonderful place, and a lot of it is due to your choice of career and your selflessness, and giving back to making others and young people stronger and smarter. And I hope a touch of that sinks in. It's not this moment that's the celebration. It's all the moments that you have and memories, and all the children and families that will come back to you and say, hey, thanks, do you remember that time? And you hopefully get a long retirement with a whole bunch of, oh my God, do you remember that time? And I hope you get to enjoy all those wonderful moments, because it is truly special what you've done for our community.
Yep. I just want to add my thanks as well. I think in retirement, I was just talking once with my kids about people retiring and having had them grow up, Ryan, as you mentioned, with a couple of you over at Manor School, who were there through the entire span with 2 of my kids. And kids always think of teachers as timeless. They're just always there. And so this idea of teachers retiring is kind of a foreign thought to a lot of kids, because really teachers and administrators and educators are just kind of always there for everyone all the time, and really are kind of the pivotal foundation of a lot of our community. And our kids grow up and really will be in their lives for their forever as they grow up. So just really thank all of you for everything that you do. Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, well, I'll close the time and with a final congratulations to these amazing women, and I'll pass the torch off to Marcy.
All right, thank you so much. And really appreciate all of you being here tonight. I'm sorry that our retirees were invited. They may be watching the YouTube live stream link, but we're sorry we didn't get to say directly to them everything that you've all have said. And then Esther, you're going to post the presentation, correct?
Yes, this presentation will be posted.
Wonderful. Okay, awesome. Yeah, thanks for leaving the surprise up until the reveal, the big reveal. All righty, so I'll start sharing my screen again, and we will continue on with the agenda.
All right. Never want to leave that. Maybe if we keep talking about them, it won't actually happen that they're leaving. No. But we do have to move on with our agenda item on communication. So this agenda item starts with, are there any public comments, Marcy, on items that are on or not on the agenda?
No, there were not any received this evening.
Okay, great. So then we'll have board announcements. So this is a time for anyone on the board who has committee work or committee announcements that they want to make. Yep, Rachel, I think you've got
Oh,
one.
I'm just sorry. This is the board announcements, not the committee updates, not under board business. So
Got it.
anything that's not committee related.
Got it. So anything not committee. Anyone? I don't think. So the only, I've got a board announcement along with Marcy and I are part of, it's not a committee, it's an ad hoc task force that was pulled together with the Marin County Office of Education for leaders in the Ross Valley community. Many of you probably know that the Marin County Office of Education was designated as the charter authorizer for the Ross Valley Charter. And so the Marin County Office of Education is going to be pulling together quarterly meetings of community members, community leaders in San Anselmo and Fairfax. And it includes the superintendent and the head of school. So Marcy and myself, the board chair and the superintendent for Ross Valley School District, the school director and the board chair for the charter school, the town council leaders from the town of San Anselmo and Fairfax, and staff people with the Marin County Office of Education who will be overseeing the oversight. So we have we had our first meeting just I believe a week ago or so. Marcy, correct me how long it was, but a week ago or so. The Marin County Office of the Marin County Office of Education is in the process of working with its board of directors on an MOU. We have in our in this agenda item, I believe it's in this agenda item, the presentation that the Marin County Office of Education made to its board of directors on this. And so just updating the community that we will be involved in those conversations on a quarterly basis, and we'll just update the community as we go along. That's one of the purposes of these meetings, is just to keep our communities updated on that process. And if anyone has any questions on it, now that the Marin County Office of Education is the oversight body, they're welcome to contact them to get some more information. Marcy, I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to mention on that.
Yeah, I did put the that presentation under the wrong item, so I will move it. It was listed under the committee updates or posted under there, so I will move it to this board announcement section. And then also MCUE begins their oversight responsibilities July 1.
Great. Yep. I believe they got 2 board meetings this month while they're in conversation around the MOU that they'll be negotiating with the charter school. So we will hear more about that at I think our next meeting isn't until September. So
yeah, they're looking to hold them quarterly.
Great. Okay. Any other board announcements, non-committee based? Not hearing any. Marcy, if you know of anybody, but I think we're probably good on that. And then correspondence, I believe we've got 1 correspondence that was posted that we've all been able to read. So there's 1 correspondence, correct? Did anything else come in today?
No.
Okay.
The agenda was posted on Friday.
All right. So then in this item, the only other thing is the report out from the closed session. So I would report out from our closed session that the board did have a discussion and approved the recommended settlement agreements on the 2 agendized items that we discussed in the closed session. So that's the report out from the closed session. And now we move on to the presentation and action item part of our agenda. So we've got 4 presentation action items. The first one is on expanded learning opportunities, or ELO, one-time funds for our district to help with the COVID recovery measures that we are putting in place to help all of our students and our families recover and deal with the impacts that the COVID has had on them this past 1.5 years. So Marcy, I don't know if you or.
Yep,
Wanna-
I'll start it off and I'll stop sharing for this part. And just as Shelley mentioned, as part of the COVID-19 relief package, the ELO grant provides funds to school district for supplemental instruction and support to students, including those identified as needing academic, social, emotional, and other supports, including the provision of meals and snacks, which we have been doing all throughout the year. And one of the elements of ELO is to continue that provision of meals and snacks for any families or students who need them. And RVSD will be looking to be receiving a total of $1,144,296 of COVID funds, the ELO funds. And of this allocation, as part of the requirements related to the grant, is that 10%, which is just taken right off the top, or $114,330, must be focused on the rehiring or expansion of paraeducators. And that's in line with education code, specifically that requires the paraeducators using the ELO funds support students in the areas of reading, writing, and mathematics. And so that's already been designated there. And the remaining funds, which come to the total of about $1,029,966, well, not about, that is the amount that's left, must be spent in 7 areas of support. And so what we have done is been able to put together our ELO plan, and Julia is going to kind of walk us through the process that we have gone through in developing our ELO plan and looking at how to use these expenditures.
Thank you, Marcy. Good evening, everyone. So based on all of the input and feedback that we've received from our various stakeholders, and this includes parents, classified staff, certificated staff, our administrative team, we have worked collaboratively to put together a plan for the use of these funds that aligns with our LCAP goals of mitigating any potential unfinished learning and supporting our students' social emotional well-being. A large chunk of the funds will go to creating the person or adding personnel to support our multi-tiered system of supports for both academic growth and social emotional wellness. And these roles include increasing the FTE for our English learner teachers, support of our English learners, adding new FTE for our Tier 2 intervention teachers. So these are teachers who are working with students who need additional targeted support after the universal supports that are put into place within the classroom show themselves not to be quite enough. They need more. And then we're also looking to add a new role to the district called the Mtss, Instructional Partner. And this role is kind of a coaching role. These will be teachers on special assignments. That's also called a TOSA. And they'll be working to support the MTSS system, but they'll be providing a lot of training and support to teachers right inside their classroom in terms of the work that they're doing with their students and the work that they're doing to implement those universal supports to kids. And they'll also provide at times some of our professional development on PD days. Wednesday afternoons, they'll be working really closely with site principals, helping with managing data, all in the service of providing support for kids. And so our hope is that by putting all of these roles into place or by extending the FTEs so that we've just got more people power. We're going to have a really rock solid MTSS in place, and we're going to set up systems that will be able to continue when this funding is no more, because we recognize that this is really short-term funding. And so anything we can do to get ourselves to, just work better, harder, faster, stronger, and all those wonderful things as we move forward, I think is going to be really advantageous for us. As a part of this, we're in the process right now of identifying an assessment system to help just manage which kids are in need of support and what kind of support they're in need of. And also equally importantly, that system will help to track growth. So we know what we're doing well. And many of our parents, teachers, and staff have reported and discussed the importance of prioritizing mental health, especially on the heels of the pandemic. And for this reason, we're creating an additional new role, and that is the wellness coordinator or partner who will be working with our counseling staff, helping to coordinate that whole system and that multi-tiered system of support. They'll be a part of the site student study teams and ISTs to help just create that safety net for all of our students. And we are also looking at expanding our elementary counseling and adding another BACR counselor, hopefully one that is bilingual and speaks both English and Spanish. And what we know, we've kind of put together this package of how we're spending the funds within those, different strategies that have been named. And we know that as we build this ship, there may be a little bit of, there may be some changes. We're right now allotting something like $75,000 for summer school, but we don't know how many students will be attending summer school, and how many teachers are teaching is going to depend on how many students are attending. So it could cost a little more, it could cost a little less. And if we have dollars that are freed up, hopefully we're going to be able to really just continue to work together to figure out the best use of those funds.
And these dollars for the ELO, they must be spent by August 31, 2022. So we do have just 1 year of spending. And as we knew going into any of the spending of the one-time dollars, because the ELO is just one of the elements of that COVID relief funding, is that any positions that we are to put in place or programs, anything that we think is going to benefit of all of our students and families and staff to help with COVID relief, if they're positions, if they're programs that need to live beyond the available funding, then we need to be able to look and determine how do we keep those elements in place. And so it is one of the danger of looking at one-time money is how to continue the services that we provide after the one-time dollars are spent. And so as Julia mentioned, that's why we're trying to put in place creating a foundation and a stronghold so that we get the best use of the one-time dollars. And so knowing that if we aren't able to continue any of the programs that we're putting in place or positions, that once the dollars run out, that we then have set a good momentum forward for our district. And then of course, if there's any elements that we wish to continue on after the one-time dollars, then we'll have to be looking at our priorities to determine what do we keep and what of any other elements of the educational system and programs that we provide our students may we not continue to utilize or have once these dollars are spent. And we take a look then at returning to just the available use of our LCFF if there's no other available dollars out there. So it's one of the cautions that we have been told in the one-time use of the dollars is be careful. And as we've talked about in our budget presentations before in our past board meetings where we've had conversations around these elements, we can have anything we want. We just can't have everything we want. So we're taking a very close look at how to get the best use of these dollars. And they're very much appreciated, by the way. We know that the services that we're looking to provide, the elements of the programs are extremely valuable and beneficial to all of our Ross Valley community. So are there any questions about the fellow plan here?
Yeah, anything you want, but only for a certain amount of time. Yeah. In this instance as well, it's the third parameter of, anything you want, not everything, and only for this amount of time. So that's helpful to make that very clear that this, and I do appreciate the perspective of trying to use the money to both benefit the current students as well as lay the foundation for future students benefit, kind of an investment in the systems. So the multi-tiered systems of support infrastructure that will carry on into the future. The idea of teachers getting trained up on accelerated learning practices, which again can be used. We know that summer slippage happens every year. So there's going to be students after every summer that could benefit from that accelerated learning approach. So that's very much appreciated. Are there any board questions? I know I have one. Is the summer program that's being put in place, is the funds that were allocated in that direction just for this summer, or was that meant to be for 2 summers?
The ELO funds are for this summer only, and then we'll see how effective that summer learning program is and whether or not we need to put it into play for next year. And again, it's that shell game, right? If you do this, you can't do that. So.
And some of the other area for the COVID relief dollars go into the 2023, and then the very last year to spend some of them is 2024. In looking at the total dollars of everything that we will be receiving for COVID relief, as Julie mentioned, we don't know yet if the summer learning, summer climb program is extremely valuable and does find that it provided a lot of support to the kids as they go into the new school year. Then we may have to look at getting rid of some other things that have been earmarked with those other dollars, not the ELO, but the other dollars that will last longer, to replace some of the things that we're looking at using for with those dollars. But we are hoping that we are looking at summer climb being hopefully a 2-year program.
Marie here, along the same line that you're mentioning the summer program, how are you planning to measure success of that program? Or is it something you're kind of thinking about, but you don't have it completely baked? What's your take on that, Julia?
That is a really good question. And I think what we've talked about mostly thus far is doing formative assessments within each of those classrooms. We're looking at probably 1 classroom per grade level of about 15 kids. So the classes will be small enough that there will be a lot of individualized attention, and recognizing the key, the really key standards and where are their kids with those. We don't want to do any real formal assessments. Because we want the feeling of this summer to feel really good. A lot of this is about that.
Joyful, yes, yes, the joy, yeah. But nonetheless, there should be some conversation about how do we call success. Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Thank
and
you.
Anna Maria, who are the summer climb co-principals, will be providing data to the school, all of the school sites next fall with how did the program go, how did the kids do in the program, and that kind of thing. So really appreciate Anna Maria leading and developing that summer climb program.
And I would add that we end the year by FNPing all of our kids, kindergarten through 5th grade, and understanding where they are in terms of reading fluency. And so we'll be able to see for some of them if, that created more progress as they moved into that next year.
Okay, thank you.
I also just wanted to note and really appreciate that our district has teachers and administrators who stepped up to help make this program happen, because I've heard how incredibly hard it is this summer to find staff in many different ways to want to continue on supporting students through the summer. So really appreciate, and it's really special and amazing, and a huge thank you to those teachers and administrators who are stepping forward to continue on, because it's been such a hard year, and just to hang in there with our students over the summer and to really come to that with, from what I can hear, enthusiasm and excitement to make this summer, a joyful, exciting, energetic summer for these kids. So just want to shout out appreciation to everyone who's making it happen for the kids.
Exactly. And also then looking forward into next year, all of the additional supports that will be in place with these one-time monies. And just as before we go on, the next agenda item after this is directly related to the ELO plan. So very, very much connected. And when we get to that item, we'll be going into those 2 positions, as we've talked about in this agenda item, a little bit further.
And Marcy, just to clarify, this is we do take a vote to approve the actual plan that is listed and was uploaded, correct?
Yes, exactly. This is a kind of a one and done review and approval of the ELO plan. Some of the other agenda items later on the agenda, the LCAP, for example, and the budget. Tonight's just the public hearing for those two items.
Got it. Is there anything, speaking of that one, you mentioned one and done, but I know that we've also talked about a lot of this. We've talked, as you guys have been putting the plan together, we've had prior conversations, and there've been quite a bit of collection of input from everything from parents through other teachers and everything. Was there anything new that came up? I didn't see anything when I looked at the plan of anything new that showed up in going out to different communities or parents that we might not have heard about. I didn't see any. I
don't think there was anything new. I think for sure the number one thing that teachers and all staff talked about was counseling and student wellness. And I think that that's a common theme throughout the entire nation and perhaps world right now. A lot of parents did talk about tutoring, and the phrase tutoring has kind of come back right now. And I think it means something slightly differently from what our traditional sense of tutoring, but that idea really just of individualized, a very small group instruction and the importance of that. And that's something that we're looking at being able to do with the additional staff that we have and throughout the day and perhaps even after school for White Hill, for our middle school kiddos.
Any other questions from any of the other trustees before we nope. Go ahead and entertain motion to approve the expanded learning opportunities plan for the grant funding that we've received, or that we will receive once we approve the plan. Any other questions? All right, I will entertain. If there are no other questions, we can go ahead and entertain a motion to approve the plan that's being put forward. Anyone?
I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendation for the ELO plan.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and we'll go ahead with the vote. Rachel?
Aye.
Wesley?
Aye.
Marie?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
And Shelley? Aye. All right.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Plan is approved, and let's go on to the second item, which sounds like it's a little bit more in depth on the multi-tiered systems of support. So this is the approval of a new certificated job descriptions that we just kind of talked about. So go for it.
Exactly. And so as we mentioned, for getting the most that we can out of any of our one-time dollars is really looking at refining our MTSS, our multi-tiered system of support. Kindergarten or TK through 8th grade. And MTSS, for anyone who's not familiar with it, is a comprehensive framework that aligns academic, behavioral, and social emotional learning in a fully integrated system that supports all students. So there are different levels, different tiers. And what we have before you tonight are two of the positions that'll be part of our MTSS system. And we have some other positions that are part of our ELO plan, but we don't have the job descriptions ready yet. Those will be ready for the June 15th board meeting. And so what we have tonight are the two specific positions. One is, as Julia talked about in the last agenda item, is the instructional support and intervention specialist position. And that's really to provide and support that tier one, the in-class components of the multi-tiered system of support to support students in the classroom setting that teachers will be doing, as they always do, as they're differentiating and providing instruction to students as they have identified needs in the classroom. And so this partner will be providing support to our teachers as well as our classified employees in providing that support. Because as you remember from the previous item, 10% of the money that we're receiving is for paraeducators to support. And so this position here will be providing that support to not just the classroom teachers, but to also the aides who will be in the class to provide that support. And then in the course of their work, they may definitely be providing coaching and also demonstration lessons. And also in that, as they're demonstrating, be providing some of those those levels of support directly to students. But this position is the tier 1 level in the MTSS model. And then the other position is, sorry, I did them backwards. That was the instructional partner position, is that position. And then the other position, which provides the tier 2, and that is the instructional support and intervention specialist position. So when students have and classroom teachers have exhausted what they can provide the student directly in the classroom, but the students still need additional support, then that will be the tier 2 level. And that could occur directly in the classroom. The tier 2 specialist may be pushing into the class to provide that support to the students. Also maybe pulling the students out and providing small group or individual instruction, whatever might be needed in that tier 2 level of support. And so both of these positions would be funded by the ELO grants. Now, how they will each be divided and separated and how many positions will we have? We're going to be looking at determining that once we get the gauge of interest of flying the openings and seeing what we have. Because as Julia mentioned in the last agenda item, it all depends on how much support that we have or interest in the positions that we receive to know then we may have to break off some of the funding that we've allocated for these positions and focus them in other areas. So we want to, first of all, we need to have the positions and the job descriptions approved. Then we can start recruiting, advertising, and then seeing what we have. But we're hoping that our partner position will be providing support across kindergarten through 4th grade, as well as a 5th through 8th grade level of support. And then the specialist positions would provide the TK through 5th grade tier 2 support. There's a whole other plan as mentioned in the previous agenda item that would support at White Hill related to, but not the interventionist position per se, like would be at the elementary positions, because that would be built into the additional FTE that we have designated through the ELO plan to provide support directly with White Hill teachers, providing support to each other and pushing in to the classrooms directly. So it's a little different at the middle school level. So the partner position would be solely or total TK through 8th grade, but the intervention specialist is an elementary position there. So any questions about these job descriptions?
Any questions? I had one question, given that this is one-time funding and that these are jobs that we're posting. Could you just talk a little bit from a staffing perspective about how that works if the fund, if they're not going to continue on, if we have current staff who might want to move into those positions, but then if those positions aren't going to continue on, do they lose their current, how does that work in terms of the staffing with these one-time funds?
That's a great question. That's why we've classified them as teachers on special assignment, TOSAs, is that they then basically are taking a leave of absence from their classroom assignment, their regular assignment, to come out and take on these positions, so that when the funding goes away, whether it's through the one-time monies through ELO and or any of the other COVID relief funding sources, and if we don't have any additional money, back when we look at running out of all of our one-time money, then they would have a spot right back in their in the classroom, whether it's a multiple subject credentialed person, or if somebody at the middle school, for example, takes on the partner position, and let's just say they happen to have a science credential, then we would be saving a spot for them to go back into their classroom assignment as soon as it ends. So nobody will be losing their jobs with this. Now, in the event that we don't have any in-house folks who want to take on any of these positions, then we would be looking to hire from outside of the district. And by the nature of the positions, because it is still a teacher on special assignment, then of course, through a layoff situation, they would then have rights to a classroom assignment that would be based on their credential area.
Any other questions from the board on the descriptions or process? All right, Well then, we can entertain a motion, and that motion is to both approve the description and the opening and creation of those positions.
This is just to approve the job descriptions. The previous agenda item was approving the funding to be able
Got
to
it.
allow us to advertise for the position.
Great. Okay, so this is just for approving the job descriptions.
Thank you.
Marie
Marie?
here. Yes, I make a motion to approve the 2 new certificate job description for the Mtss instructional partner and support and intervention specialist.
Great. We have a motion
I'll second the motion.
and a second. All right, we'll do a vote. Marie,
Aye.
Wesley,
Aye.
Ryan.
I think you just clapped before that vote, but I'm aye.
Sorry, I did.
Very
Rachel?
excited. Yeah.
I do I have to clap.
No, you don't have to clap. I'll clap again, Shelley. Now we can all clap. Yay.
Yay.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for this is and again, this is all work and creating of positions which are super important and helpful, but recognizing that this is over and above the regular cycle of all of everyone's regular work in our schools. So thank you so much for the ongoing and continued, as we know, while we may be moving into yellow tier and out of the main part of COVID and the pandemic, it's going to be with us for at least another year. And we don't quite know how long the impacts are going to happen. So thank you for your continued work on this.
Thank you.
All right, so now we are on to the staff presentation and public hearing. This for, let's see, for this item, and I'm going to get out my information on this particular item. This is a staff presentation and then a public hearing for the local control and accountability plan, and for education code sections 42127 and 52062. 2 separate governing board public meetings held at least 1 day apart are required for the school district budget hearing and budget adoption. And in addition, the LCAP public hearing must occur at the same meeting as the budget public hearing, and the LCAP adoption must occur at the same meeting as the budget adoption because they are connected. The LCAP item must precede the budget item in each meeting, and the public hearings require 72 hours public notice, and both the 2021-22 budget and the 2021-22 LCAP must be adopted on or before July 1st. So we are complying with all of that I just mentioned in terms of the connection between the LCAP and the budget, and we will be hearing a staff presentation, and then if there's any board questions, and then doing a public hearing. So go ahead with the staff presentation.
Thank you. And Julia's going to have the honors this evening. Thank you, Julia. Oh, and I think you have some other partners in that too, right? Eric?
I do.
Great.
I've turned my video off because I think that my internet is getting a little bit glitchy. So please let me know if there's a delay or if things aren't going as they should. We are loading. There we go. Okay. There you go. Okay, we should be in. All righty, so taking us back to what is the LCAP. As I think we all know by now, the LCAP is a plan that is a part of our funding. It's a part of the LCFF state funding formula, and it's a 3-year plan that's updated every year. And it has in it our goals and the actions that are associated with those goals. It also, the LCAP addresses the needs of all of our students, but most especially our English learners, foster youth, and low-income students. And the LCAP must address the state of California's 8 priority areas, which include things like school academic achievement, school climate, student access to a broad curriculum, and parent engagement. So I really appreciate this graphic because I think it does a nice job of capturing kind of the feeling and the thought and the intent of our LCAP. And when we think about school, we generally think about students and teachers and content, the what that is being taught. And then you see between inside these Venn diagrams that when teachers and content come together, that's when we talk about rigor. And we talk about what makes kids' minds grow and synapses fire and what gets them fired up about school. And then equally important is that nexus between the teacher and the student, which is relationship. And we really, really know now, we have so much research that shows how very, very important relationship is as a part of learning. And then this other piece, equally important here in this kind of trio, is relevance. And that comes from the interaction of student and content. And this is where we're talking about culturally responsive teaching, that we are teaching the kids that are in front of us, that we know our students, and that we are responding to our students. And I always like to pull from Zaretta Hammond. She's an amazing thinker. Has written a book called Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, and she talks about culturally responsive teaching, and she also talks about the nexus between that and brain science. And she says classroom structures and processes need to tend to the emotional well-being of everyone rather than just uncovering the day's lesson plan. So again, we are prioritizing our students' social emotional wellness. And we have 3 goals as a part of our LCAP. And you'll see on each of these slides, this little equation here that goes right back to that thinking, right? That all of this intelligence and learning and brain work that our students undertake is right there in combination with the heart and the relationship. And that causes those wonderful light bulbs to go off. But our first goal is really an academic goal, and it's making sure that we are assessing student learning in mathematics and English language arts and English language development for our English learners, and that we are providing interventions and supports as needed. No big surprise here with this goal. It's an important part of teaching and learning, but we want to be really intentional as we're coming out of the pandemic. So some of the actions that are associated with this goal, the first action being that refinement of our district-wide MTSS supports for all of our students, and particularly for those students who may have some unfinished learning from the time of the pandemic. And we've already talked lots tonight about an MTSS and the people that will be playing a part in that system of support. A second action is developing a plan for accelerating learning to close any potential learning gaps. And again, what we're talking about here is kind of it's taking remediation and flipping it to acceleration. So rather than going backwards to finish up the learning from last year, we're moving forwards and we're teaching into grade level standards. But in order to do that, we need to be really thoughtful. We need to know which standards at each grade level and in each curriculum area are really the key standards that our kids need to get. And then we need to plan for how students are going to meet those standards, how they're going to catch up. And for those kids who are already there, who actually don't have any unfinished learning, how are we continuing to push those kids forward so that they continue to feel that challenge and that engagement that is so important? And then that action 3 is really doing this big data dive and data review. And that's why we are looking to adopt an assessment system so that we can be more intentional about what supports we're giving our kids and when we are giving kids those supports. And so you can see the state priorities there and the metrics being the means by which we will measure progress on this goal. CASP and local benchmarks. We have our Healthy Kids survey that also gives us some information as well. And I'll pause there before moving to the next slide in goal 2. Any questions here? All righty. So goal 1 is about academics and goal 2 is about emotional well-being. And we borrowed this sentence here: create a safe, equitable, and inclusive learning environment in which all students feel a sense of belonging, are respected and celebrated for their individual differences, and are empowered to thrive socially, emotionally, and academically. And this is lifted straight from our Ross Valley School District Racial Equity Mission Statement. But we really feel like this speaks to the overall wellness of our students. And that first action is really looking at all of our systems of support for emotional well-being, which includes having that equity lens and making sure that students from all backgrounds, from all diverse backgrounds, are getting what they need to be the very best students and young people that they can be. And the second action is really a professional development one, where we are going to continue providing professional development around things like trauma-informed practices, which we've been talking about and working with our teachers and staff on for the last about year and a half, and also the equity work that is really important to us. And so when we have new teachers that come into the district, making sure that, you know, they weren't there perhaps for the training that we did on implicit bias or culturally responsive teaching. And so how do we make sure that all of our teachers are there and on board, and how do we deepen the work that the teachers who've had some training have gotten, and how are we deepening those conversations? And then that third action is a curriculum action. And we are looking very specifically right now at a new SEL curriculum called Changing Perspectives, which has a diversity strand, which is one of the reasons that we are trying it out. And all sites have made the decision to pilot that program next year. And then, as I've talked about at previous board meetings, we have a group of teachers working on a social justice book bundle project, which is kind of the beginnings to some integrated anti-racist education and curriculum. And so this has a lot to do with school climate, pupil engagement. And we haven't had school site surveys in a little while, and it's time to bring those back. And so we will be developing school site surveys, and we will make sure that those surveys speak to the social emotional health and wellness of our students, and that they also speak to students' experiences with regards to their race and their ethnicity and their gender, and what it feels like to be whoever they are within our Ross Valley School District system. Any questions before moving on to goal 3?
No, I was just going to say, I appreciate the idea of what I've heard of sometimes talked like a spiral approach to professional development, like you said, that just continues to use the same themes but cycles around as new staff come in, so that it's not a one and done type of approach. So I think that's.
We actually, our Delight team of educators spent a long time talking about our professional development cycle, and it's something I should probably bring back to the board to see, but created this whole graphic of the different stages of professional development and helping it. It actually has become a part of our certificated evaluation process as well. So super important to recognize that we're all on a path of development, and we're all just moving forward on that path, and recognizing what a teachers need and differentiating for teachers.
Great.
Important. And Eric is going to pop in and talk about goal 3.
Oh, absolutely. Really so appreciative and indebted to Julia for really being a brave leader in LCAP land. And it's been really fun to look ahead to the next 3 years and be creative and really think about these 3 big buckets: academic performance, wellness, and then this goal 3, engage in a continuous cycle of collaborative input and feedback involving colleagues, students, and parents on the climate and learning experience of all students. Julia mentioned in a previous goal, vehicles like California Healthy Kids Survey. We were super proud to survey all 5th and 7th graders last month. Well, actually, it was more kind of late April, about their learning experience, connectedness, school climate, drugs, alcohol, tobacco, exposure, all kinds of really valuable information that we're going to continue to unpack. with our staffs to really learn from our students, and of course continue to do that on a yearly basis. But also too, we understand that we don't need to have a big state survey. We can give smaller, more timely surveys throughout the school year across the district and site by site on any of those different aspects of the student experience and the parent experience and the staff experience. And we should be getting that formative feedback, just like a classroom teacher every single day is getting feedback and processing that feedback on how their students are learning. So action 1, develop and deepen processes for authentic feedback surveys, listening sessions, parent education, coffee chats, etc. There should be many avenues for engagement, not just for parents, but also for our faculty and also for students. And getting our students involved in that process of asking them for their ideas and their experience is very empowering. And something in my own experience as a site principal for many years was really a powerful lever around which we built so much great energy, highlighting successes, but also targeting areas for needed growth. Action 2, foster greater participation in and access of underrepresented parents into the life and operation of the schools. Again, we can't depend on, let's say, a group of parents that might be, most prone to coming and stepping forward to volunteer or to participate on a committee. We have to go out and really create multiple means of engagement, whether they're in person, whether they're virtual, whether they're during the school day, whether they're in the evening, to really work hard to reach out and find people where they are, because often people really want to be involved. They just don't know how to do that, or they're too busy to step up and volunteer during the school day. It doesn't mean that they don't really want to be involved in the life of the school and in helping be a part of the community. Action 3, engaging staff in planning and implementation of these district initiatives. And again, we're really continuing the work to bring the 5 schools into closer proximity. Julia's Venn diagram from earlier, I think, is a really great visual representation of what we're looking to do with our 5 schools. They're unique and wonderful in their own individual way, but we're connected around these goals, around those shared values and shared practices. Action 4, increase participation in DLAC, our English Language Advisory Committee, which has been really special to facilitate this year for me personally. And again, really working hard to make sure that all families have a voice and have opportunities to share their input, to make sure that they're heard, and that we're really attending to the needs of their students. And action 5, increase communication with special education families to share resources and information. And from my lens through student services, overseeing our special education program, serving over 200 students with IEPs. This is a really critical aspect of our equity work, making sure that our students that are most vulnerable are receiving the supports that they need. And then also too, we're really making sure to engage parents, provide them education on the IEP process, and to just continue to partner with them, which really makes special education something really uniquely dynamic, and so much fun to be a part of. And this goal as a whole addresses those 3 state priorities you see: the parent involvement, pupil engagement, school climate. And we're going to have so many different vehicles with which we can measure growth. Again, big things like healthy kids, smaller things like those school site surveys, and then really looking at the scope of participation in these different committees. which we don't want to just maintain, we really want to grow. So we're excited for that. I wanted to pause for any questions or comments.
Erica, this isn't any material change. This is all great. I was just, I know that in many instances, we often use interchangeably, or we talk about parents and guardians. And so it's just a thought of maybe to integrate that language into the final version of the LCAP, is talk about, family education or parent/guardian education, just again, as inclusive as possible for all the different kinds of families that are out there that we support. So that's all came to mind on this particular slide, since it's got a lot of conversation around how families are involved. And I really appreciate all of the thought about, as you said, the different ways that we engage all of our families in our community. And that's wonderful and important. So thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anyone else? No. Okay, carry on.
And so just a reminder of our stakeholder engagement groups. The group that has been there along with us as we've been drafting the LCAP, and really it began with asking a couple of questions about really what do you see our kids needing in order to thrive in Ross Valley, and particularly moving forward out of the difficult time. And from that, we landed on our goals and continued that feedback loop towards developing actions. And so that was the work of our Superintendent's Council, which includes classified staff, certificated staff, administrative staff, and parents and guardians. And the parent guardians are representatives from our parent clubs, our PTAs, PTOs, and our school site councils, and our district equity team, racial equity team, parent representation as well. And then there are other groups that we continued that same process, with whom we continued that same process, like our district leadership instructional team of educators, or our Delight group, which has 2 representatives per site, plus special education, and then working with our special education local plan area, our SELPA, our district, our DLAC, our District English Learner Advisory Council, and then our equity teams, both our district equity team and our parent guardian equity task force. Although not as directly working on the LCAP, the conversations that took place within those teams very much influenced the development of the LCAP. And in terms of our timeline, pretty straightforward, but you can see the groups each month that we were seeking feedback from. And here we are, landing now in June, getting ready to finalize our LCAP as we move forward for June 15th. And so at this point, just any other questions or thoughts to leave us with as we move on to finalizing the LCAP and bringing it back for board adoption on the 15th.
Any other board questions, clarifications? Marie?
Marie here. It's not a question, it's a comment and a suggestion I made earlier to Julia that just want to make sure my intent is clear, is that I'm suggesting that we put a little bit more metrics in that plan, and leveraging some of the metrics that are already being published through the California dashboard, not creating others, not going and gather more data, but looking into some of the indicators that are already being published at the California dashboard, and see if we can leverage them in a goal 2, some of the goal 2, and maybe in a couple of other places as well, that we can indeed have something to measure in 3 years.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think you're right, particularly with we have the CASP, of course, that's a part of our dashboard, but also the absenteeism.
The suspension rate, and they are in the dashboard for a good reason. They might not be necessarily so critical to what we are doing, but I do believe because they are in the California dashboard, they should also be, or there is a place for them as well in the LCAP.
Anyone else? Rachel, Wesley, Ryan? Any other questions?
None from me.
Okay.
Good
And if
job,
any-
Julia.
And
I know that's a tons of work.
And as always, the explanation that you provide for us and for anyone else who's watching, really appreciate the thought and time that you put in to communicate this in very approachable, very accessible slides and presentations. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a great team effort. Glad it's almost over though.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So if there are not any more board clarification questions, then I will call the public hearing open. This is one of those board items that we have that is an open public hearing specifically around this so that we can take any comments. I know we haven't had any written ones that have come in, but Marcy, is there anything else with the public hearing?
No, we did not receive any public comments this evening on this agenda item.
Okay. So since we don't have any of those public comments, we will go ahead and close the public hearing. But for anyone who is watching and who has now had this presentation, again, this is one of those hearing items that we have 2 hearings on. So we are still going to be taking public comments through the next hearing. So if anybody would like to provide those, they can go ahead and send that in to us. On a related agenda item, as we saw, we are going to move on to the next item, which is the staff presentation and public hearing on the preliminary 2021-22 district budget and multi-year projections all the way for 2022-23 and then 23-24. And again, same as with LCAP per the Ed Code section 42127 and 52062, 2 separate governing board public meetings held at least 1 day apart are now required for the school district budget hearings and budget adoption. In addition, the LCAP public hearing must occur at the same meeting, the one that we just had, at the same meeting as the budget public hearing, and the LCAP adoption must occur at the same meeting at the budget adoption, which will be at our next meeting. The LCAP item must precede the budget item at each meeting, which it did here and it will again at our next meeting. And the public hearings require 72-hour public notice, and both the 2021-22 budget and the 21-22 LCAP must be adopted on or before July 1st, which we will do. So we will go ahead now and do the staff presentation and board clarification questions or comments.
Thank you. And Chris Carson, our CBO, has the honors this evening on this agenda item.
Yes, and thank you, Governing Board, President Hamilton, Superintendent Trahan, and Governing Board members. Marcy, am I screen sharing?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Yep, perfect.
Perfect. You can never see it on your own screen. So, so in terms of our budget, this first slide, we talk about the risks to the budget, but the reason I also want to point out that this slide is here is because it does come from one of our many partners in education finance, that is School Services of California. We get when you are in school finance, there are a number of partners that we get information related to budgets from. One of them is School Services. They're the leader. We also get information from the California Association of School Business Officials, CASBO, California School Boards Association, CSBA, and Marin County Office of Education, MCOE, and other partners. But School Services does a really good job and provides input after every budget cycle from the state. And this was part of the May Revise presentation that they provided to school districts. And what they are talking about here are the risks to the budget, the state budget as a whole. And really, you see it right there in the graph. First and foremost, in terms of impacts upon the budget would be inflation. With everything that's going on, where we're have trillions of dollars of aid coming from the federal government, it's starting to drive inflation, and you're seeing prices at the pump go up. You're seeing prices at the grocery store going up, and that can have an impact upon the stock market as a whole, which then impacts one of the larger sources of income for the state, which is personal income tax. So just know that that's something that can happen as we move forward. It can have an impact. One thing I want to point out when looking at the state budget, the governor is currently involved in a recall effort. He's being potentially recalled, obviously. And as part of that, he has begun to throw a lot of money towards education, some of his friends in the political arena, so to speak. One of the things he's done, and I'm going to kind of go through this list. I don't normally do it, but it's really important for everybody to understand. The first and foremost, we have a funded mega COLA. They're giving us more money than what we really are entitled to. They're making up for giving us 0% in the current fiscal year, plus they're funding us next year's COLA and giving us an additional 1%. So it's a total of 5.07% on our LCFF revenues. He's also proposing to eliminate almost the entire cash deferral that is out there. And the only 1 month that would still be deferred would be the month of June. He's also proposing to have a universal transition kindergarten across the state for all 4-year-olds by 24-25. Doesn't impact us except to put in a little bit younger children. We do have a transitional kindergarten, but it does have an impact potentially on some of the other community funded districts if that's a requirement to have a TK program. As you move forward, we also were talking about earlier about the Extended Learning Opportunities Grant and also the in-person instruction grants. Those are all those new dollars that have limited timeframes. It's a lot of money across the state, and if you are in a district that has a high number of unduplicated pupils, you get a tremendous amount of dollars. Moving forward, you also have some additional funds in the concentration grant funding. He's proposing to increase the funding level for students that are, for districts that have high incidences of unduplicated pupils, which are those students that are English language learners, living in poverty, foster youth, and homeless. So if you have a high incidence of children that fit one of those categories, then you're going to get additional funding. He's also proposing to add a summer and after school program for districts with high unduplicated pupil percentages. He's also proposing to provide additional funding for educators in what he calls educator investments. He's trying to bring new teachers into the system because during all of this stuff that's been going on in terms of the COVID pandemic, a lot of teachers have left, and prior to that, we had a lot of teachers leaving education as a whole. And he's trying to build back up that pipeline of teachers and encourage those teachers to come back or to come into the profession. And so if you're in a district in a high unduplicated pupil percentage area, then you're going to have some of those targeted dollars. He's also providing additional funding for expanded broadband services for underserved communities, which again has to do with that UPP, the unduplicated pupil percentage. And also he's providing college savings accounts for unduplicated pupil students. And so one thing I want to point out, you kept hearing me talk about that UPP and underserved communities, et cetera. A lot of the dollars that the governor is putting out there may not have much of an impact upon the Ross Valley School District because it's going towards those communities in underserved areas, underserved communities. So I just want to point that out. That does have an impact. And looking at the Ross Valley revenues, the top half of this page shows the factors that go into making up our local control funding formula revenues. And as you look at it, first you have the increase in your cost of living, what we call the COLA, the funded COLA. Then you have the unduplicated pupil percentage, and then you have your funded ADA. And ultimately, as you run it through the calculations, you end up with your local control funding formula. Now, as you look at this, one thing I want to point out is that you'll see red circles in 2020, 21, and 2022, 23. The reason I'm pointing that out is because you'll notice that our funded ADA goes from 1969 to 1697. And that's a drop in our enrollment that we've been seeing in the current year and what we anticipate seeing next year based upon our cohort analysis and in terms of students that are currently being registered. And so as a result of COVID, what they've done is they've given us a 1 year additional relief. Normally, because if you're in declining enrollment, you would receive a 1 year lag. And so we would feel that decline for the current year in 21, 22. But because of COVID, we're going to get that pushed out 1 additional year. And that's why you see it move really for 2 years. The other thing I want to point out when looking at the revenues there, you go from 16,555,000 to 15,460,000. And you can ignore the 17 million for just a second. The 17 million is what I have in our budget for LCFF revenues. But just look at the $2 amounts that are circled. And what you'll notice is that they're between those 2 years, there's a $1.1 million decrease in total LCFF revenues. And so as you start to look at the budget as a whole, that really is what's driving it. And it has to do with our ADA. And so everything else aside, as you look at the expenses and everything else, when revenues are impacted that heavily, you can't, it's much more difficult to make the cuts because it doesn't equate to one in terms of cutting teachers in the classroom and the loss of revenue. You end up losing more revenue than you cut in expenses. The bottom half of this page just shows you the LCFF per ADA amount. So if you wanted to, what is a rough dollar amount that we get per child, you can see it across the fiscal years. The reason I talk about the LCFF so much is because when looking at our total general fund, the LCFF revenues are the single largest piece of pie in all of our revenues. And for next fiscal year, they will be 63.7% of our total general fund. And I do want to point out that the parcel tax is the second largest at 15.6, and then you jump down to the state and other local at 8.5. But I also want to point out that the state revenues, it's kind of when you look at it, you see one-time revenues built into that. Those in-person instruction grants, and the other COVID relief funds that come in. So it's a little bit deceiving when you see that it's 8.5%. It may not be as you move forward into those out years. And then when looking just at your revenues as a whole, your LCFF, your federal, other state, and local, you can see the differences between the current fiscal year and next year. And again, the differences are caused by things such as the 5.07% COLA under the LCFF. When looking at the federal revenues, we have different things that have happened. We have one-time dollars in terms of the Federal CARES Act. You have the ESSER funds that came in, the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds. So it's just kind of a matching of it to the proper period, but you see the changes, and a lot of that has to do with the one-time nature of those revenues. You also see that when looking at your other state, and you see that in terms of the learning loss mitigation funds, the governor's emergency relief funds, the GEAR funding, the extended learning opportunities grant, in-person instruction, et cetera. So that's why you see those changes. And then when you look at your local, the single largest source of funding there is your parcel tax, and part of that has to do with your part of the increase has to do with the parcel tax, as well as increasing back up our rent lease fees as a result of no longer extending cuts to our partners or community partners. When looking at everything that kind of drives our budget, one thing that happens, and this is one of the things that it can drive business managers crazy. It drives the board and community crazy, and I'm sure it drives the superintendents crazy as well. You notice changes in what we tell you from one budget period to another. And it is part of what happens in the budget cycle. And it happened to us extensively in all of our different factors this particular year, between the May revision and even our second interim, what we were showing. And so first, in terms of our funded COLA, we were initially showing 3.84% for next year. Then it jumps to 5.07. And then in terms of our multi-year projections for revenues, it went from 2.98 down to 2.48. You can see the differences. So it happens in our cost of living adjustments, but it also happens in terms of our STRS and our PERS and our SUI. STRS and PERS are our two pension costs. And so all staff that qualify, if they work enough hours, that are certificated, would bump into the STRS pension retirement system. So that would be your teachers, your school administrators, et cetera. And if you are a classified staff member and work enough hours, you would qualify for the PERS pension system. And that would be people like myself, our custodians, our clerical staff, the instructional aides, et cetera, that if they've worked enough hours. But what you notice, in addition to those rates changing between the second interim and the May revision, you also notice that there are increases that go from year to year. And so as you see those percent increases, it's really important to note, because STRS, PERS, and SUI are those are costs, they are what we would call statutory benefits. And so they're expenses that are charged against our salaries. And so as our salaries change, we multiply our salaries against these percentages. And so increased percentages means increased costs. And it may not seem like a large increase to go from from 0.05% to 1.23% in SUI. But you also see large increases in our PERS, for example, going from 21-22 from 22.91% to an estimated 26.1%, so that those large increases have substantial impacts upon our budget. And you do see that. I'll show you a little bit more when we see our actual expenses. You'll be able to understand that. And without further ado, this is our general fund expenses. And when looking at it, 81.8% of our total general fund is in salaries and benefits, so $22 million. Now, when talking about going from 22% to 26% in PERS, only a portion of those $22 million are PERS salaries, but you also see increases in our teachers' STRS rate, and you see increases in our SUI rate. And so when you have those increases, what may be a 1 or 2 or 3% increase has substantial impacts upon our general fund when you're talking about $22 million of our total general fund, 81%. The reason that you have such a high percentage of your costs in salaries and benefits is that we're in a people business, and we're here to educate the children of our community, and you can't educate children without staff. And because of that, you have such a large percentage of your expenses in the form of salaries and benefits. But again, that's your single largest source. As you move into the multi-year projections specifically related to your ending balances, what you'll notice is you start with your beginning balance, you include your revenues and your expenses, and you get a net increase or decrease. And then you end up with your ending balance. And then you calculate your reserve percentage. The one thing I want to point out is we are increasing our reserve percentage between 2020, 21 and 2021, 22. And the reason for that is that 1 year spike in our LCFF revenues. And then you also see moving forward in 2022, 23 and forward deficits. And that's because going back to that revenue slide, you see the change in our revenues causing these deficits as we move forward. The one thing that I do want to point out is as you look at this, we go from 16.2 to 18.5 to 15 basically, then we're down to 8.8. There is a board policy that we stay above the 10%. So it would be 3% required minimum reserve for the state plus an additional 7%. And so we would be slightly below that. But if you also look at the information that I've provided to the public and the governing board, I do anticipate to spend a little bit less in the current fiscal year than what we have in the budget. That happens every year. The one thing that I want to point out is our budgets, they really do need to be kind of that worst case scenario. It's based upon the information that's provided, and we need to budget for that. We need to make sure that we have the funds that the district and the governing board and community expect us to have to be able to educate our children moving forward. So that's why you see that it happens in every district. But you know, I do want to point that out. So although it's 8.8 here, it probably will come in a little bit higher as we close our books. And with that, do we have any questions?
Are there any questions or observations? Maybe Wesley and Ryan, especially, you guys have been through a number of these. I know one of my questions was that board reserve that was that we've decided, go back, thank you to that one in terms of our board reserve. What the discussions were around, is it all 3 years going forward should be at 10, or kind of when the next update is, or was there a time frame in terms of that decision, in terms of approving 3-year budgets? What were the prior discussions on that?
On the reserve?
Yep, keeping the reserve at 10% or above. Was it for next year's budget, always for all 3 years?
It was a board policy to avoid the devastating effects of the recession in, I think it was before I came on the board, but it was when we had to do enormous amount of staff reductions and layoffs. And we just did not have enough in reserve in order to hold on to the staff that we needed to hold on to, and we had to do a lot of layoffs. You know, the one thing that I will comment on here, and you know, I've heard report from a number of different CBOs over the years, and a lot of what I'm hearing from Chris is what I've heard in the past as well. We are forever kind of at the mercy of what's going on in Sacramento. And, you know, the governor, for political reasons, is tapping into the former governor's rainy day fund in a big way, I think, and putting a lot of money out to the districts, I think, in order to silence his critics. I mean, I don't want to be too jaded, but you know, I don't think we can be lulled here into a sense of complacency about our 10% board reserve just because right now things are looking a little bit more rosy. We are still in declining enrollment. In terms of our multi-year projections. But to answer your question directly about the 10% reserve, it was not meant to sunset at any time, Shelley. That was meant to exist in perpetuity, from my understanding, in order to avoid the heartache that we went through earlier. Because as a small district, we just don't have the same amount of reserve, for a lack of better word, for those rainy days.
Right.
Well, if I could chime in here, you know, a couple of years back, you know, I started looking at the numbers that Midge put out before Chris got here, and I was seeing red down the line. You know, this isn't coming as a shock to me, to see the 22, 23, 23, 24 reserves, or the decrease in the, you know, the net decrease in those years. However, question for Chris is, Chris, I believe this is directly tied to ADA, correct?
It is correct.
Okay, so can you give us a number of students that we need to go get to make these numbers whole? And I know that it's a simple math number, and it's not necessarily tangible, but you know, our district, let's make no mistake about it. You know, we are in a, I don't want to use a battle for students, but we are in a search for students. If we want to retain these great programs and these great teachers, we got to put butts in seats. And to put butts in seats, you know, we have competition out there. And we also have hopefully new families moving into, you know, the real estate market is changing a little bit of our dynamic here in our old generation town. And there are people here that are cashing out, and young families are trying to get a piece of this fantastic district and this fantastic community. And I'd like to know from Chris, how many students do we need to reach out to the community to say that we need to go get, so to speak, and put in seats in our district in order to avoid having cuts? Because I believe if the community recognizes that this is not just the Chris Carson show where he's moving commas around and there's 2 of them in his paycheck, but that there's real numbers here and there's real students that need to be in these seats to keep these services. And we can't just count on that these numbers and these deficits are tied to students in seats and they need to be in our district. I think our community can go find them. And I think that our marketing programs should really target how we're going to go get these students to bring into our excellent district. And if it takes us as a district to sell what we have, well, maybe we should start working on marketing and selling what we have. I think it's a great product. Marcy, I think you've got an amazing team. I like this board, and I like the way that I think that these other trustees are thinking outside the box. But those numbers are there because we have a declining enrollment, and they should be seen as such. They should be seen as butts in seats and not just commas on the summary of the financial multi-year projection. And that's my piece.
If I could first start with related to that 10% reserve. From a fiscal standpoint, the reason that it's good is it provides the governing board the ability to have time to be able to respond to fluctuations. And you really see that when looking at our ending balances between 21-22 and 23-24. It's
Right.
roughly a 10% drop.
Right.
But by having the 10% reserve, it affords us the ability to really to look at what our attendance looks like,
Right.
and make decisions as we move forward rather than having to
Right.
jump and do it immediately. We do have to make decisions.
And let me just jump in. What you were saying before, which I've heard from you, Chris, and from prior CBOs, is that our budget is so heavily, so much of our overall budget goes to salaries because that's what the school district is all about, right?
Yes.
And our teachers are our number one resource. Not only do we have a teacher shortage overall in California, but we don't want to get in a situation. We just had this wonderful celebration night of those people who were with the district for a long time. We want to keep our teachers and cultivate them and bring them along. The other policy reason why I think that this 10% reserve is so important is to give our teachers a degree of a sense of stability, that when we do have a declining enrollment, that we're not going to be in a pressure situation where we're going to have to let people go, which is what my understanding is what occurred before we had a board policy that was the 7% beyond the 3%, which is required by California law. So anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I meant, Chris, to kind of bootstrap off of your whole point, which is that on any given year, the vast majority of our outlay is teacher salary.
Yeah. And also because we are doing our budgeting process, obviously now in June, when we don't know our final enrollment numbers for next year. And especially this year in particular, we have much more variability than we might in prior years in terms of being able to predict what students will come back after the pandemic, especially the kindergarten, first graders, second graders, younger students. So, so I do think that there's that much more
Absolutely right. We don't know how many people who decided either to homeschool or to have put their children into private school. How many of those people are going to return to our district over the summer? And so it's very, very difficult to project what the next school year will be in terms of our number of kids.
Marie, did you?
Yeah, what I want to point out here to give you credit, Chris, here is that every district is in the same situation of, at least locally, of, you know, enrollment is going down. We don't know how many kids are going to come back. So I think we need to be, although concerned in the long term of seeing that reserve going down, we also need to give ourselves a little bit of a vote of confidence that what we don't know today, we might know in 3 to 4 months, and there would be multiple iteration of that budget cycle. We talk about budget and we talk about money every 3 to 4 months. And so what we don't know now, we will know more in 2 months and in 4 months and in 6 months. And so we don't even know if we can even hire any of the position that we are trying to create, right? We don't know if we're going to have enough teachers for next year. So there are just so many unknown that hopefully with having so much transparency with you, Chris, and explaining to us, you know, how things are working, that as a board, as a trustee, I feel confident that although the numbers don't look super good in the next 2 to 3 years, it seemed to me that you are bringing enough information to us on a regular basis so that we understand that some of the assumptions are kind of a little bit, they're going to move. And therefore, it's almost like we are on this boat together, not really knowing a lot of those variables. But as long as we keep discussing those variables and you keep bringing to us that information, and we kind of, as we hear about new legislation here and new things happening in Sacramento, as long as we keep talking about it and we keep being informed about it, then there is a high chance that the numbers will look likely better. But we can't say that for sure. Am I okay?
Yeah. And we've got 3 years, like you said, we've got 3 years looking out. So we need to keep our eyes on that third year out, not just next year. And if we start seeing it not coming back up into the 10, 11, 12% range after we go through the next review, then that's important for us to continue to keep looking that 3 year out.
And it is a mathematical problem, so to speak, exactly as Ryan was explaining. We can do the math on it. It doesn't work out exactly the way people think, though, because you also have to take into consideration staffing. But we can certainly get that information for you for the next board meeting, because we have to bring this back anyways. And I'm happy to provide information. But you know, when you look at it, it's going to be somewhere in that 200 range.
Great.
Chris, I had a great question.
Sorry, go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, sorry, just a quick question for Chris. So you mentioned in one of the slides about TK, like a 4-year-old TK universal program. What year was that going to start?
It was by 24-25, I think, was the fiscal year.
Okay. Do you know if those, because I know like now currently in TK, they're not funding the students until they turn 5. Is that still the situation?
It is currently, but
okay. So would they would they change that? Would we, if they had four-year-olds, would that be funded fully as a?
Yep.
Yes, it probably becomes a full TK program as opposed to just a few months, so a full year. But there's still information that would have to be put out, obviously. Currently, it's just a proposal, and it could even be pulled out from underneath as they come and provide the final budget here at the end of June.
Okay, thank you.
When the next, so after we approve this budget, just so we know again, when is the next budget review? Marie had mentioned, you know, we look at this
The
every
next day
quarter.
almost, right? It seems that
I mean, it
just-
does come pretty quickly. But after after we have more solid enrollment for next year, I'm assuming in what month is that?
Well, there's several things that can happen. So let me talk about that first. We would be bringing this back in 14 days. So it would be approved by the governing board and adopted on 6/15. And as we look at the state deadlines, they have until 6/30 to sign the final budget. And between 6/15 and 6/30, it can change substantially from what we have. It may not, but last year it changed a tremendous amount. And so if the changes are material between what we've adopted and what is the final budget, then we have 45 days to provide a budget to bring back to the governing board for approval to make those revisions. Now, absent that material change, we have our next budget would be on, it would be actually our unaudited actuals when we're closing our books for last year, the current year. And it would also be rolling forward our balances and updating our budgets for the 21-22 school year. And that happens by September 15th. And then after that, it would be the December 15th first interim budget.
And so that's
within that time frame. And I know that's kind of a wide time frame, but it really depends upon lots of factors.
Sure.
We may not have full attendance information by September. And so that's why you might see the attendance adjusted by December. But if there's something else that has changed, we might make some revisions.
But certainly by September, we'll have much more solid attendance than we do now, which is our even more uncertain than in normal end of years in terms of people enrolling, and the decline in enrollment having that double hit between a general decline that was happening plus the COVID decline. So by September, what I'm hearing you say is we'll have more solid ending balance from this year to know what gets moved over in terms of reserves for the fall. Plus we'll have more solid enrollment. So
yes,
great. Any other questions from the board or anything else, Marcy, that you think we ought to have in mind? Chris, I know in one of your other presentations, you had that enrollment trend line slide. You know, if we wanted to bring that back next time, that might be a helpful since there is such a connection between the enrollment.
Absolutely. We also have that in our write-up for this budget.
Right. Any other questions?
I would like to just add that based on what Ryan said, going back and taking another look at our marketing strategies, we are definitely doing that and looking at needing to make some changes or revisions to what we typically do. So that is something that staff is taking a look at right now. And it sometimes does mean that you have to spend a little in order to on marketing in order to get students, and have the effects of the marketing be worthwhile and fruitful. So you could be seeing us come back by early fall with, some needs in the marketing area to put a little bit more money. We do have an allocated budget, part of our budget for that, but it may need to be increased.
I mean, also just to touch on that, if the answer to some of these multi-year projections to get our numbers better is the messaging regarding students in our district that we need them and really market that. I just think that we we can help turn those red numbers black. It's just going to take a more of a targeted response like you're talking about, Marcy.
And we also do want to see what the trends are going to be in California, because as of now, the trend in California is that there are supposed to be fewer students statewide. And so if that is the case, there could be just a matter of dwindling population in our two towns, San Anselmo and Fairfax, and then being able to recruit and or have our families choose Ross Valley, which is one of the important factors is the attraction to our district. And then once they do arrive in our district, is retaining the families to stay in our schools.
Any other questions? I think so. This is the public hearing. So if there are, we will be bringing this back again for approval at our next board meeting. Any other clarification questions or anything? Because otherwise we can, again, given that it is a hearing, we can move to open the public hearing. So we'll go ahead and call the public hearing open. And Marcy, did we receive any public comments on this agenda item?
No, we have not.
So having no public comments at this time on this agenda item, I'll go ahead and then close the public hearing. And again, if there's anyone out there in the public who has been listening to this presentation and wants to add some public comments for our next board meeting coming up in a couple of weeks, please go ahead and send those in to us so that we can incorporate them into our considerations and our conversations for the final adoption of the budget. That would be great.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Chris.
Yes, that was very helpful. All right. Let's see, we are moving now on to item G, which is the consent actions. We have 3 items on consent. Is there any questions or clarification on those? Okay, so hearing no questions or issues with the consent, entertain a motion to adopt the consent items.
I'll move the consent agenda.
And I second. Oops, Ryan second.
Okay, Ryan, you got the second. So we've got a motion and a second. Wesley?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Marie?
Aye.
And Rachel?
Aye.
All right, and Shelley, aye. That consent actions are moved. And now we're on to board business. So committee updates and reports from trustees. Who has some committee updates?
I had the JLAC meeting. Oh, Rachel, you had one you wanted to go first? In general, you have like 5 updates from 5 committees. So, okay, so I'm not Rachel. I don't have 5 committees, but I have a JLAC update. And interestingly enough, and I'm going to keep it short because you have received a lot of information through different emails, and then what's going on, all the information that is public about what's going on with the budget. You have a lot of information about that, but let me tell you about that meeting, because that meeting happened the morning before Gavin Newsom made his big announcement about the budget. So everything that was talked about during that JLAC meeting was kind of almost, okay, it's about to be announced, but we don't even know if it's going to be approved. So that could be big, but it might not happen. So that was kind of this interesting momentum around, too bad we are meeting today, we should better meet tomorrow. So there was definitely a momentum issue with that meeting. So therefore, I don't need to give you an update on all the talks about the budget, because really now we have more updated information about the budget, and some of it we already discussed with Chris, and there is a lot of public information about the budget piece. So I'm going to give you just a couple of updates on what is not budget information that was discussed at the JLAC. And one of them was actually something I've talked a little bit earlier today, was around that famous, like this bill AB 967 that is kind of getting some popularity out there, that is around a concern about the pending lawsuits for special education students that are not getting their IEP services by district, and the amount of you know, the risk and the amount of financial liability that every district has with that. So there is definitely an effort to kind of to maybe package something about that. That's getting very high priority. This is really a big deal. There is, and that's not concern of ours, but I want to point it out to all of you because that's a big deal for the county. It's around the what's called CTE, which is Career Technical Education. That's really for high schools, but that's getting tons of noise and a lot of noise at the county level. You had a lot of the principals and trustees very interested in that, and MCOE staff as well. Definitely very really want to promote this whole like career technical aspect. There is a lot of money. Let's say, yes, there is definitely a lot of money there. And to your question, Rachel, about the TK, the TK amount would be something like, I think in 23-24 would be maybe $1 billion, and 2 years later is $2.5 billion a year if we really do this TK thingy. So those are such a big ticket items that it's almost like the winner takes it all. It's so the conversation is really, are we getting to get a few of items that are going to be part of that budget and the legislation, or is it going to be really one ticket get it all? And if it goes just after TK, for instance, that's so massive that there might not be much room for anything else to really happen. You see what I'm saying, Rachel? With that, it was just interesting to see that you have those very big things and a lot of little things happening. There is also a lot of interest with community schools. That's not really what we are doing much in this district, but around the idea of the comprehensive set of services that you would have through schooling. And again, and I think I mentioned that last time, that is still very much of a partisan, that's very much like, you know, Democrat against Republican, around the idea of the layoff of the classified and certificated staff happening together on March 15. So there is really a very strong movement to have that being approved, versus there's a lot of pushback from CSBA, from the district against that, because they really do not want to have the same burden and the same administrative burden of having certificated and classified staff being under the same regime of having this March 15 deadline that is just so hard to manage. So that's really all what I have that's not budget related, because all what's budget related is really kind of back up in the open right now. And I think we should really pay attention to collectively about what's going to happen, you know, on June 15 with the budget. And I would forward you any information or any kind of nice recap I'm getting by email, so that, you know, if I have something that's well written, I would forward. I'm sure, Marcy, you will receive some as well. And I think, yeah, my information is as good as the one Marcy will send you, but some of those articles are really well written. And so I encourage you to have a quick look at that. That's what I have from JLAC.
Great, thanks. Wesley, do you have any updates from any of the committees?
I'm going to be talking busing with Marcy at the GEPA committee meeting day after tomorrow. So I'll have some updates for you on busing.
Cool.
All right. And Ryan, do you have any committee updates?
No.
All right, short and sweet. And Rachel, how about you?
So I got to go to a YES board meeting and to a DLAC meeting last week, which is always kind of fun to go to those. The DLAC meeting was a little different than the other one I'd been to. It was more like a listening session for the equity group. And so it was just really interesting. And it was it's always a welcoming environment when I've been there. So I wasn't surprised that it was the same as always in that regard. But, this time people were speaking about their personal experiences specifically towards equity and looking through that lens. And they were kind of giving information about their family's experience in our district, just overall, and any suggestions that they had. And if you like to stretch yourself and you're not you're not a Spanish language speaker, I definitely welcome you to go and listen, because everybody is so supportive of each other that, like, I haven't taken Spanish in years since college, but I feel very comfortable talking in those groups. And then for yes, there was a lot of talk about budget. They've come short a little bit on a lot on their fundraising this year because of so many factors, and it's been so hard just because so many families have struggled, and they recognize that. And at this point, they're doing a final push, I think, but it's more just getting everybody to donate just even a little bit if they can, to try and help encourage just everybody's sense of supporting the whole art and music and theater and all that community that they've built over the years. And then they're planning to do a survey at the end of the year to kind of just figure out, get family input and see where people are and what they think about the YES programs, and try to just get more information. I know in the past that they've done some of those surveys, and so they wanted to revisit that, especially after this last year, which has been so unusual. And then let's see, what was the main thing? They're doing a major donor event. Well, not an event like they traditionally do, to say thank you to the people who donate like 2,200 or more per year. But they are going to acknowledge those folks, and they've come up with some really creative ways that have been very cost efficient. So they've gotten donations that they're going to be giving out to people who have donated in larger sums. So they're pulling those together right now, and they sounded really thoughtful and pretty cool. And then all the different department chairs that got to speak about, their great experiences in the classroom, having kids in the classes and how well things are going. I think the theater, they were talking about figuring out how to make that work next year. And some of the things are kind of waiting to see what the budget is and what they're able to fundraise before they go and invest a whole bunch of money in programs that we can't really afford. So they're just being very thoughtful about how they're moving forward with the money and with their budget, kind of like all of us are. And the classes and the teachers in the classrooms were just so enthusiastic about what they're doing with the kids, and just so happy that they've had these last few months with them together. So that was pretty much it. It's great.
Thanks. The committees that I've been attending the various district parent and guardian equity task force meetings, and then also the district equity committee, and then was involved in the superintendent's council. So a number of listening, as you mentioned, Rachel, the kind of listening sessions that have been going on around equity in our district, and looking at different parent and guardian and students experiences in our district. And then with the superintendent's council, a lot of the LCAP and those kinds of planning meetings, and seeing a lot of interconnections and alignment with respect to everyone's goals and interests with looking at equity and supporting kind of anti-racism curriculum and helping our district move in that direction. And I was really happy to see that the LCAP integrating. So seeing a lot of alignment and integration of the overall district direction, and the staff conversation with respect to the district staff equity team. There's a lot of alignment there with where I think a lot of the parents and guardians are. So I'm looking forward to that all coming together as we move forward together into the future with our LCAP. So that's my update. Anything else before we move on to the minutes that we need to approve? I don't think so. All right, so we've got two sets of minutes to approve. We've got May 11th minutes, and then we'll have May 18th, but let's go ahead and do the May 11th. Is there any amendments or changes? Nope, so moved. He didn't even wait. Marie?
I second.
All right, so we've got a motion and a second. Ryan?
Aye.
Marie?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
Leslie?
Aye.
And Shelley, aye. All right, so that's approval of May 11th and May 18th. Any changes or amendments, additions, subtractions on that one? If not,
I make a motion to approve the minutes of May 18.
Great, so that's Marie,
I'll
and
second it.
Rachel jumped in with a second. All right, Marie.
Aye.
Rachel.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Wesley.
Aye.
And Shelley, aye. Okay, approval of the May 18th special meeting minutes. And now we are on to the superintendent and cabinet reports. Marcy?
Thank you so much. And Chris, I know you have been super duper busy with everything budget, LCAP, and all the other fun things going on in the business department and serving food too. You were out and about today doing that. Is there any other updates that you have from your department?
I just wanted to mention that, and it's not just the business services division as a whole, it's really every school site and the principals and their school staff. We're working hard on the promotion ceremonies. And so our staff is working with the sites on proper spacing, planning for the seating, as well as signage. We're going to be helping quite a bit as well. So we're excited about that. It's the first one we've had in a couple of years, and we're really looking forward to it. And with that, there's nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you. And Julia, anything else to, I know, again, same items, budget, LCAP, ELO. What else from student services?
Or from curriculum and instruction.
Or sorry, curriculum and instruction. Sorry about that.
Yes, well, we're just about done with CASP testing. White Hill is in its last week, and then we will be wrapping that up. And I think that parents will receive student reports via the Aries portal, but probably not until July at some point. It's going to take a little bit longer for those scores to get released by the state this year. And then just that Matt and Maria have sent out invitations to families for this summer climb program, and they're moving forward with planning for that program. And so onward, yes. That is it from us, from me.
Thank you. All right, and Esther, I know a lot continues to go on in HR. That's a very busy department all year round.
Absolutely. And this time of year is no different. Of course, as Julia mentioned, we are working in collaboration to make sure that our summer climb is staffed, as well as summer school, and getting people into positions for next fall as well. So we continue to run interviews. In fact, we have some more going on tomorrow.
Great, thank you. And now student services. Eric Sable, anything to update on student services?
Well, I thought Julia was gonna do that for us because she would have done an even better job, but okay, fine. So we're probably 6 weeks now into planning for our extended school year, which is a service for special ed students that require more intensive summer support to prevent any regression in the skills earned over the school year. And we anticipate multiple groups of kids to be located on the Brookside campus, and then also middle school age kids at White Hill to be there alongside the summer climb students. So we're really excited about that. And, it's always exciting and challenging to plan for summer while you're also closing down the school year, but it's going to be really special. And being a part of extended school year last summer is my first experience as a part of the Ross Valley family was really special. And so I'm very excited to share updates at future board meetings about that. And that's it for now.
Thank you. All right, and from the superintendent's office, we're continuing to monitor enrollment and look to see if we can approve any of the intra-district requests that have come up for next school year. We're looking at doing that now on a rolling basis at the end of each month. And then we do take a break in July while all the school offices are closed, because there is then nobody to monitor if any new families are registering or if any families have moved out of the area over the summer. So we then resume taking a look at intras back when the school offices reopen in August. And the same is with inters. We do have a number of inter-district requests wanting to come into the district. So we are hopeful that the families have some flexibility, that even if there isn't space at the desired school, that they would be willing to go to any of our schools, and then we could approve them. And then also, as the others have mentioned, planning for summer is always busy, because closing out one school year while at the same time preparing for another school year. And then this summer with the enhanced summer school program keeps us all a little bit even busier as we're closing out the school year. And I know I've said this before, I'll say it again. We are looking forward to next school year already, where we'll be reopening in full return. So full return, full school days, 5 days a week, and looking at whatever the guidelines may be in place. Of course, we'll be implementing those, but as each day goes by, it looks like the guidelines are getting to be fewer and fewer. So fingers crossed, with Marin moving into the yellow and the doing away with the blueprint for a safe economy that'll be ending June 15th, that we will be able to maybe just have masks and maybe a little bit of social distancing, not quite sure, we'll see. And the good news with the potential approval of the vaccine down on into the younger than 12 ages, that will also be an added benefit for our schools next year. And just as we're planning for a full reopening, we also need to be mindful of potential weather events. So whether it's or other disasters, fires, let's hope that we do not encounter any more of those, but we do need to plan for whether we have PSPSs, smoke days, those kinds of things. And if there is any one benefit, I mean, there are some out of COVID in terms of helping our schools to reimagine, is also what we do if we do have a, rather than closing our school, as we would maybe have needed to have done in PSPS times or power outage times, is taking a look at now. We've been so used to reimagining our schools and getting different models in place that we won't have to close our schools if we do have any kind of a natural or man-made type of incident that affects our schools, but we would have remote learning in place. Now, of course, under a PSPS, we wouldn't be able to have distance learning because there would be no electricity and no internet. But we were very successful with last spring with packets. And so those could be very much used. And we would spend some time at the beginning of the year creating packets for the fall, because of course our packets that we developed last spring were for the spring. But we have some ways that we are looking at being able to continue school, even if we do end up with power outages or other weather events. And we do look very much forward to these last 2 weeks of the school year. It is bittersweet because it's been a very grueling and brain exhausting year, but it's also been a very great school year on a lot of respects. And so we look forward to closing out the year on a high note, and also all of our staff and families and students having a great, wonderful break over the summer, and then being able to come back in the fall to what will be great with our expanded learning opportunities options. And looking forward, as tonight was a way to say goodbye to our retirees. We do welcome our new principal, Wade Thomas, and she will be here at our June 15th meeting to be introduced to the board. And we do have 2 activities going on this Thursday, where we have her introduced to the Wade Thomas staff, and then that evening, a Zoom invitation for families to meet Julie Harris, our new principal of Wade Thomas, starting in 21-22, to meet the families. So it's been a wonderful, I have to say, great first year as a superintendent. Despite all the trials and tribulations, I love it. And I love to be able to continue all the fantastic work with all of our staff, all of our board of trustees, our administrators, families, students, and just looking forward to continuing on next year. So here we are, off to heading into our final board meeting of the school year on June 15th.
Thank you for all of you and your second to last committee cabinet report update. We'll have one more in June, but again, wanting to thank Marcy, you and all of the staff for the tremendous effort that's gone in this year, and note that while we are coming out of COVID, we are still going through another round of adjustments, and really appreciate both ending a school year and planning for a summer, which is a new thing that we're doing this year, and making that extra effort to have in-person promotions for 5th grade and 8th grade. That is so special to those kids to be able to do that. And that is, again, on top of everything going on. So just the continued pivoting and effort that everyone is putting in for all of our kids is phenomenal. So thank you all on that. And we'll have one more going forward. All right, so after updates, we're looking at the meeting review. So future board topics and board direction before a quick meeting debrief. The only thing that I will mention is that Marcy and I didn't put it in any of the board announcements. Marcy and I did participate in a statewide meeting on, again, moving into the next transition of what do board meetings look like in the future. When we go back in person, do we go back in hybrid? How are we going to manage that? So we'll be bringing that to you. I don't know if we'll bring it to you next time. I think maybe in June, but that's on a very short agenda for us to have a discussion about what that's going to look like as we as a board transition back into person, and then as we as a community transition back into Board of Trustee meetings with the community engaged in person and hybrid as well somehow. So we'll be bringing that. Any other board direction or anything that, Marcy, you can think of that needs to be given or made or clarified from this meeting or future topics?
Can't
Nope.
think of anything tonight.
Okay. And meeting debrief. Anything that anybody wants to say about this meeting? I know it was like we had 4 really big topics to go through in terms of LCAP and the budget, ELO. Any debrief besides being done? Free?
No, that's a good one. We are done. Yes.
Done.
I'm like,
okay. All right. Well, if we don't have anything else to say in terms of the debrief of how it went, I mean, I think thanks for hanging in there. Good questions. I know we'll have those 2 subjects coming back, our LCAP and our budget. So until 2 weeks from now, our next meeting, Marcy, is June 15th, correct?
That is correct.
All right. So until June 15th, we will adjourn. Thank you all very much.
and it is 9:33.
And it is 9:33. Thank you.
1 for Rachel, 1 for the team. Goodbye, everybody. Speak to you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Bye, Marie.